الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. To proceed, today's lesson بإذن الله تعالى, we want to continue the discussion that we started in our previous lesson regarding the subject of a fi'lun, a verb that can affect two maf'ulani or maf'ulaini if it's in the mansuban state. Two objects, a fi'lun that affects not only one but two objects. Therefore, in our previous lesson, we spoke about certain categories of أفعال, verbs. And the category that we introduced in our previous lesson was أفعال القلوب, which relates to verbs connected to القلوب, the heart. And they are verbs of perception such as رأيت, وعلمت, and so on and so forth. Now, we mentioned that أفعال القلوب themselves are of two types. The first, الفعل الذي يفيد اليقين, a fi'lun that results in certainty or gives rise to certain knowledge, such as رأيت العلم مفيدا, I know that al-ilm, knowledge, is mufidan. That type of fi'lun, ra'aytu or alimtu as-sunnata khayran, I know that as-sunnata, the sunnah, is good or better than what opposes it. Now, that type of fi'lun is what we call yufidu al-yaqeen. It gives rise to certain knowledge, or as we say, al-ittiqadu al-jazim. The second type of fi'lun, which is from the categories of af'alul qulub, is that which yufidu al-dhann. Yufidu al-dhann. What is al-dhann? Al-dhann is al-ittiqadu al-rajih. Al-ittiqadu al-rajih, meaning a belief which is more likely to be correct than not. It is a belief in which you are more likely to be correct than not. So, therefore, af'alul qulub are two types. The first that gives rise to certain knowledge, and the second that gives rise to adhan, and that's the type of fi'lun that we're going to speak to or speak about in today's lesson. So to begin, therefore, what are the categories of af'alun that give rise to a type of knowledge which is more likely to be correct than not? They are based upon the meaning of dhanna. So that is dhanna, the most important fi'lun that we will be speaking about in this lesson. Dhanna, it means, as we said, a belief which is more likely to be correct than not. Best illustrated by way of example. If I say, for example, dhanantu, see, that shouldn't be there. Dhanantu al-amra yasiran. Siran. Dhanantu al-amra yasiran. What does it mean? It means that I thought But remember, I'm translating it as I thought, but the meaning is that I'm more likely to be correct than not. ظننت الأمر, the matter is يسيرا, simple. ظننت الأمر يسيرا. What do we notice about this sentence? That al-amra and yasiran, the matter and yasiran means simple. What type of sentence is it in its original form? It is al-mubtada'u and al-khabaru. So therefore we know that this category of fi'lun, meaning the fi'lun connected to al-qalbu, the heart, matters of perception, that the two objects which the fi'lun affects are in essence, or in their original form, al-mubtada'u and al-khabaru, as we can see here. ظننت الأمر يسيرا, I thought the matter is simple. I considered the matter to be simple. Now, the point to note, with many of these af'alun that we will be speaking about and have spoken about, a word of caution. And that is that they frequently have more than one definition. So we have translated dhanna as al-ittiqadu ar-rajih, meaning a belief which is more likely to be correct than not. However, dhanna can also mean al-yaqeen, certainty, and that can be slightly confusing. Why? Because the same verb, dhanna, has different levels of certainty in its definition depending upon its context. In this context, it's al-ittiqadu ar-rajih. In the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, in which Allah Azza wa Jalla said, الَّذِينَ يَظَنُّونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُو رَبِّهِمْ. That ayah, in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned those who يَظَنُّونَ. So it's a fi'lun mudari'un. يَظَنُّونَ, those who have dhann أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُو رَبِّهِمْ, that they will meet their Lord. Is that type of dhann one of more likely to be occurring than not, meaning that they will meet their Lord, or is it one of absolute certainty? Rather, it's one of absolute certainty. So we know therefore that dhanna can have the meaning of absolute certainty at the highest level. It can be a level of certainty where you're more likely to be correct than not. And it actually can have the opposite meaning of certainty, mere pure speculation. Why? Because we have another ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah in which Allah Azza wa Jalla said, وَمِنْهُمْ أُمِّيُّونَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ الْكِتَابَ إِلَّا أَمَانِيَّ وَإِنْهُمْ إِلَّا يَظُنُّونَ. That amongst them are those who لَا يَعْلَمُونَ الْكِتَابَ, they know nothing of the book, إِلَّا أَمَانِيَّ, except wishful thinking. وَإِنْهُمْ إِلَّا يَظُنُّونَ, and all they do is pure speculation. So we have speculation, which can be dhann, and we have a belief which is more likely to be correct than not, which can also be dhann, and we also have the highest level of certainty, which can also be the dhann, but the one we're talking about is al-ittiqadu ar-rajih. Right, so there are a number of af'alun that have the meaning of dhanna. We hope this example is clear. Dhanantu al-amra yasiran, I considered or thought the matter is simple. Hasanan. After dhanna we have khala. Khala has the same meaning of dhanna. As I said, there are a number of af'alun whose definition for this particular usage that we want it for, meaning al-ittiqadu ar-rajih, there are a number of them that is the same. So to illustrate by way of example, therefore, if we say أخالك, so we'll use the present tense, أخالك صديقا صديقا. What does this mean? أخالك. This is الفعل المضارع. So it's the present tense of خال, which we know is الماضي. أخالك, I أخالك. So the ka here is ضمير متصل. But what is it? أخالك. This is المفعول به الأول. It's the first مفعول به. In fact, we should have mentioned that in our previous example of ظننت الأمر يسيرا, that al-amra is the first maf'ulun and yasiran is the second maf'ulun. But never mind. Khaluka here, rather akhaluka, the kaf huna is maf'ulun bihi al-awwal, and sadiqan, which means a friend, is the second maf'ulun bihi. We hope that's clear. And the origin, meaning if we were to say anta sadiqun, you are a friend, that therefore is a al-mubtada'u and al-khabaru. So akhaluka sadiqan, and as we said, khala has the same meaning of dhanna. The third verb that we need to mention regarding this matter is hasiba. Hasiba, very common is hasiba, which is used for the same definition and purpose as dhanna. An example of that would be وَتَحْسَبُهُمْ أَيْقَاظًا وَهُمْ رُقُودٌ. And where do we read that ayah? In Surah Al-Kahf. وَتَحْسَبُهُمْ أيقاظًا وهم رقود. حسنا. وتحسبهم, this is why we mention it. وتحسبهم. Here, this is the present tense al-mudari. تحسبهم, meaning you consider them. So where is al-maf'ul bihi al-awwal, the first maf'ul bihi? It is hum. It's the damirun muttasilun hum مبني على السكون في محل نصب مفعول به. It is the maf'ul bihi in the position of being mansubun. Of course, we cannot say it is mansubun because it is mabniyun ala sakuni, and any ismun which is mabniyun cannot be applied or given the attribute of a particular state, such as marfu'un, mansubun, or majrurun. Therefore, we have to say fi mahalli nasbin. That's the first maf'ulun bihi. Tahsabuhum, you considered them. Them being the first. Ayqadhan. Ayqadhan, yaqidhun is a plural of yaqidhun, meaning awake. So the plural of yaqidhun is ayqadhun, and it is mansubun. Why? Because it is the second maf'ulun bihi after hum. And then we have wahum ruqudun, and wahum ruqudun, and they are asleep. So that's speaking about the group of youth who entered the cave. Then Allah Azza wa Jalla calls them to sleep, and He said, وَتَحْسَبُهُمْ أَيْقَاظًا, that you would think if you looked at them that they were awake, but rather hum ruqudun, they are or they were asleep. Hasiba is our third one. The next one is ja'ala. And to emphasize the point again, that all of these af'alun, or many from them, will have more than one meaning. And if that meaning is not in accordance with the definition that we have here of dhanna, then of course it's not considered to be from أفعال القلوب. It's not considered to be from that which yufidu adhan, and it will not therefore affect two objects. We hope that inshallah ta'ala is clear. Only if the meaning of the fi'lun is in accordance with dhanna is it applicable to this particular rule. Therefore, ja'ala here has the same meaning of dhanna, or for our purpose. So to illustrate, therefore, the ayah وَجَعَلُوا الْمَلَائِكَةَ وَجَعَلُوا الْمَلَائِكَةَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ عِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ إِنَاثًا وَجَعَلُوا الْمَلَائِكَةَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ عِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ إِنَاثًا. Right, what does this ayah mean? وَجَعَلُوا, and they considered. Remember that ja'alu does not here have the usual definition of wada'a, to place. Like in the ayah, إِنِّي جَائِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. Rather here, ja'alu has a meaning of dhanna. وَجَعَلُوا الْمَلَائِكَةَ, and they considered al-malaikata. Therefore al-malaikata is the maf'ulun bihi al-awwal. وَجَعَلُوا الْمَلَائِكَةَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ عِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ, they are the worshippers of ar-Rahmani, inathan. So they, al-malaikatu and inathan, meaning female, they either mushrikun considered that the al-malaika, the angels, are female. But the point to note, and the reason why we mentioned the ayah, is to illustrate the example of the use of ja'ala as dhanna, which affects maf'ulaini, two objects, the first being al-malaikata and the second being inathan. That therefore is number 4. Number 5 is a verb which is less common, and it is hajar. Hajar. What does hajar mean? Again, here, for our purpose, it has a meaning of dhanna. He considered, or he thought. But remember, here, this individual is considering it to be correct. So for example, haja الطفل الصقر حمامة حسنا. Haja, he assumed. Who assumed? الطفل. الطفل means the child. The child assumed or considered الصقر. الصقر means the eagle. حمامة. حمامة means a pigeon. So the meaning therefore is the child considered the eagle to be a pigeon. Where are our two maf'ulani? The first is as-saqra, which is mansubun. The indicator that it is mansubun is al-fathatu al-zahiratu ala akhirihi. The fatha upon the end, and hamamatan. The indicator for it being mansubun is the same, tanweenu fathin or al-fathatu al-zahiratu ala akhirihi. And again, haja has a meaning of dhanna. On to the next type of verb that conveys the same meaning. It is adda. What does adda mean? Adda usually refers to counting, that he enumerated or counted something. And if it does mean that, then it's not from أفعال القلوب, and therefore it doesn't affect two مفعولين. So to illustrate by way of example, we could say la, which is la الناهية, meaning not to perform a particular action. La ta'dud, ta'dud, la ta'dud al-aduwa, aduwa, la ta'dud aduwa sadiqan, which of course is obvious. Sadiqan, what does that mean? La ta'dud, do not consider. Al-aduwa, al-aduwun, al-aduwu or aduwun means the enemy or an enemy. La ta'dud al-aduwa, do not consider the enemy sadiqan, to be a friend, which is obvious. But here al-aduwa is mansubun. Why? Because it's a maf'ulun bihi. It's the object of ta'dud. You consider, la ta'dud, you must not consider. Al-aduwa maf'ulun bihi al-awwal, sadiqan is the maf'ulun bihi al-thani, and that example bi'idhnillahi ta'ala is straightforward. After adda, the last two that we're going to consider is za'ama. Za'ama. What does za'ama mean? Again, here for our purpose it means dhanna. However, it's usually used to imply a negative thought. Not that that affects it affecting two objects, of course, that's irrelevant. But the point to note is za'ama usually is used in conveying a negative meaning. For example, za'amani. What does za'amani? Za'amani. So here, za'ama, he considered. Ni, me. So we have an attached pronoun on za'ama, and ya al-mutakallim here represents al-maf'ulu bihi al-awwal. So za'amani, he considered me. Who considered? We can introduce a fa'ilun, al-muttahim. What does al-muttahimu mean? Al-muttahimu means the accuser. Right? It's from ittahama, he accused. So the accuser considered me, za'amani considered me what? Kadhiban. Kadhiban. And as I said, that kadhiban here and za'amani, he considered, it conveys a negative meaning. So za'amani, when used as a substitute or a synonym of dhanna, then it will imply a negative meaning. Here, what do we have? Where are our two objects? The first is me or al-ya'u, which represents ya al-mutakallim, so I'm the first object, za'amani, and the second is kadhiban, a liar. Right, so the final example of al-qulub, rather أفعال القلوب, not al-qulub, because al-qulub just means heart, but أفعال القلوب, that gives rise to a meaning more likely to be correct than not. Of course, this is with regards to the one who has that belief. Not that we're saying it's a universal truth, because clearly some of these were not correct, such as the belief of the mushrikun and so on and so forth. But in the mind of the one who's articulating it in their mind is a belief more likely to be correct. So the last one that we need to consider is hab. Hab is interesting. Why? Because even though it doesn't look like it, it actually is fi'lu amrin. It's the command form. It's like saying dhunna. So the command form of dhunna is dhunna, you think or you consider. So if you say hab to somebody, it is you consider. Hasanan, you consider. Therefore, how can we demonstrate this? By way of example, if we say samihni for it, samihni, samihni wa habni mukhti'an, wa habni habni mukhti'an. Right. What does this mean? In fact, we have two here, don't we? Because we have samihni. Samaha, it means he forgave. Right? It's very common, actually, its usage, particularly in Arabic speaking countries, when they want to excuse themselves before they say something or do something. They say samihni, right? So samihni means you excuse me. Wa, and habni. What does habni mean? It means you habni, you consider me. You consider me mukhti'an. Mukhti'an means somebody who made a mistake. And mukhti'an is different from khati'un. Mukhti'un is different from khati'un, because mukhti'un, which is what we're using, is somebody who made a mistake not knowing or not intentionally. So mukhti'an, habni, you consider me to be habni mukhti'an, mistaken. Therefore, to summarize, and they're quite interesting, these Af'al al-Qulub, for the reason that all of them convey the meaning of dhanna, that they all represent this idea that yufidu al-dhann al-rajih, that they represent a type of belief which is more likely to be correct than wrong in the mind of the one who articulated it. And of course, they all take maf'ulaini, they all take two objects whose relationship in essence is that of al-mubtada'u and al-khabaru. We hope that bi'idhnillahi ta'ala is clear. We will conclude on that point. If you have any questions, then you're welcome to ask. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.